If you have a garage, shed, loft, attic, or basement, it can feel like the perfect place to store those things that you don't want to see in the body of your home. Out of sight, out of mind is very real thing, and we need to treat these areas the same as we would the rest of our home. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about how to set up your storage spaces for success.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here are your hosts, Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Leslie.
If you're new to the Declutter Hub podcast, you're so welcome. What you'll find is that we try and find a fun factor in the serious business of decluttering. And if you've been here for a while, you know exactly what we mean. So thank you so much for listening.
If you'd like to get involved in conversations relating to this podcast, it all takes place in our Facebook group. So come and join our lovely, warm, supportive community. To find the Facebook group, go to declutterhub.com/group to find out more. Or you can search for the Declutter Hub community on Facebook.
Well, Leslie, I think we need to start first. What do people store in all of these storage areas? Because we find a wide range of items, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. From your kind of old furniture, it might be stuff waiting for upcycling, or it might be stuff that you've gone, oh, I'll take that out. And, a lot of people have got furniture that they don't use in the house, and they actually think that it's going to be useful storage. Like a chest of drawers is going to be useful storage in a garage. Sometimes it is, but it rarely is. We've got all those seasonal decorations, depending on where you live in the world, depending on the humidity, the damp, the heat, the cold, the dust, all of those things is going to determine what kinds of things you store. But seasonal decorations are there quite often. People store memorabilia, sentimental stuff. We've got suitcases, of course. Suitcases sometimes full of stuff, sometimes empty and waiting to go on holiday, sometimes never used for 20 years and there. We've got camping gear, skiing gear, snow gear, hand-me-downs, baby equipment. Any more?
Old toys. Or toys that we think we want to pass on to other people. Oh my gosh, Leslie. Paintings, lamps, wallpaper, half-used tiles for a project that never got finished. I mean, you name it. Everything is in there.
One thing that definitely is in there, appliance boxes. Just try as we might. I think we're on a personal mission.
Yeah.
Kind of encourage people to actually not keep appliance boxes any longer than you need to. And really, do you need to keep them at all? Like, I don't ever keep an appliance box at all. I think there's something like a 6-week window where you might need an appliance box. But you know what they're going to do if you say, well, I actually got rid of the box and it's faulty, so give me my money back. Do you know what I mean? You don't need the box. But anyway, let's not go on a kind of tangent about appliance boxes. But basically, these things don't fit in our homes typically, right? So we try and put them in these what we like to call bulk storage areas, and it can be a garage, it can be a shed. I feel like sheds are not really a thing elsewhere in the world, like a British thing, I think, right? Sheds. A loft, which for us is an attic, which is above the house. Or elsewhere in the world there's a lot more basements than we have, but we have basements here as well. Do you know what I mean? Then there's outbuildings and from farms, and like there's loads of places. But basically, if it don't fit in your house, you're like, you know what, I'm just going to put it there. And then it does become this kind of out of sight, out of mind mentality. But I think the key to getting these things under control, because they are amazing spaces, is treating them in the same way you do the rest of your house.
I know, Leslie, you were talking about all of this and my mind wandered a little bit, because I'm like, and then what happens if actually people's attics and basements and lofts are full? They hire another storage unit somewhere else to put their stuff in. Let's not forget all about those.
Yes, there are reasons, of course, why you might need a storage unit, but it's a temporary thing, right? So it can be there if you've suddenly inherited somebody else's house and you need to sort through it, but you need to be in the process of sorting. It might be that you're moving house or you're renovating your property and you need to take all that stuff out of your house temporarily. But don't ever have a storage unit as an overflow from your house unless it's a very, very good reason. They're costly. They're a nightmare. They stay there. We've seen so many people that have wasted thousands and thousands of dollars on these storage units for no good reason. Invest the time in sorting it out yourself, or even getting a professional organizer to help you is more cost effective than using a storage unit. But then, now we're going on a rant about storage units, and that's not what we're talking about, Ingrid. So
I know. But the thing is, we have all these storage areas full of stuff because we just don't want to make the decision and we don't want to let it go. And we think it might come in one day at some when the stars align and the sun shines and the rainbows are out and you know what I mean? And we just think, well, let me just put it there temporarily. And in your head, it is temporarily. And then before you know it, 12 years later, it's still there. And because we just can't go, I'm going to let that go. It's no good for me anymore in my current life and where I'm currently at. And we just kind of move it. It kind of gets moved from the body of the house to, I don't want to make a decision. Let me just put it in my storage area.
in some ways, these areas, when you actually set about decluttering them, are a lot easier than the rest of the thing because you've almost made your decision already. You've decided that it wasn't suitable for your body of your home. And so, I mean, obviously Christmas decorations and stuff, things like that are different, but a lot of the things, kind of the lamps, the furniture, all those kind of things are like, it is absolutely a delayed decision. And actually, when you go, I'm going to declutter, is that up for debate? You look at it and go, it's been in there 6 years. I decided 6 years ago that I wasn't going to make a decision. I decided not to make a decision. And now I'm going to decide to make a decision, and out it goes. And so actually these things can be quite straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other kind of stuff that we find all the time in lofts and basements, Ingrid, is like we're kind of holding on to things from the past for nostalgic reasons, sentimental reasons, which is like fair enough. And we need to make sure that stuff is quality rather than quantity. And then we also hold on to things for the future. So we're clinging on to things, furniture, electrical appliances, sentimental stuff for our kids. We're holding on to it for our children for later in life, toys even for grandchildren. All of those things, we're like, oh, well, I'm not quite ready to let go of those things. So I'm going to keep hold of them. So what we find ourselves is that in these lofts, they're from a life in the past or in the future. And there's nothing that's utilized here in the present, right? So that's another thing that holds us back.
Absolutely. And I think, you know what, if it is just, the thing is, Leslie, if it would just be one or two boxes, it's not a problem, right? But we see things that absolutely chock-a-block, and it gets an absolute nightmare to get to the stuff you actually need. So for me, my seasonal decorations are in my loft, but they're handy, they're in boxes, they're labeled, I can reach them. So it then become an absolute chore. But we come in lofts and basements and garages and you think it's going to take at least half a day just to reach this stuff. And then even though you might know you've got it in there, you don't want to use it because it's such a chore to even get it out.
I know. I think the problem is sometimes with these storage areas, because they typically, a lot of them are quite big, it allows us to be lazy with our decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about your loft, Ingrid, that you boarded out like a couple of years ago in lockdown,
Yep.
things like that kind of project, right? A few years ago, you've got a massive loft. You could pile stuff up there till days come home, couldn't you, if you wanted to? You haven't. You've got like 10, 15 boxes up there of very useful things. You've got it boarded out. It's a beautiful space, and it's the perfect place for you to put those things that don't belong in the body of your home that you could use on an occasional basis. But the problem is it expands and expands until it becomes completely unmanageable. And as I say, we become kind of, oh, well, it's not really doing any harm. Let's just leave it there. And then it starts to grow, it starts to build, and it becomes completely unmanageable. And that's what we need to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, we then look at those areas with complete overwhelm. We feel like how we're going to do this. We might have waited too long for us to kind of get to those areas easily ourselves. So then we need to get other people involved. And then we feel guilty for having stacked up all this stuff for years and years and years on end. So because these are not kind of, oh yeah, let me just go in 10 minutes and get a box down. This normally requires quite a big effort, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely, absolutely. It's not easy, is it?
No.
Those declutter of that involves a lot logistically, emotionally, practically. You need help often. There's up and down ladders, there's the cold, the damp, the wet, all those kind of things come into play, really. So
Yeah.
it's not a nice thing and not a nice place to declutter, to be fair, but very satisfying when you've done it.
Yeah.
I think if the words just in case ever come into your mind at any point when you're on a decluttering journey, that's your kind of note to self to go, let me really think about this. If ever you're keeping things just in case, they might come in handy, those kind of things. Really evaluate why and make a decision. What is the likelihood of that just in case scenario happening? You've really got to, drill down on realism and make sure that you're making the right decisions for your life here and now and not for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Leslie, another big category of items we find in these storage areas are sentimental items, sometimes from ourselves, sometimes from our children, lots of times from parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles who've passed away, and we had to empty their house and it all had to be done quick, quick, quick. And we kind of threw stuff in a box and thought, at some point, we're going to sort this out ourselves and see. Hard category to do.
It's a very hard category to do, but it's an important category to do if you feel overwhelmed with the sentimental stuff. I mean, can stuff truly be sentimental if it's stuck in a loft or a basement? I think I think you can find these treasures in a loft sometimes and feel nostalgic, but isn't it nicer to actually incorporate those things in your day-to-day life on pictures or little box frames or little photograph frames that you've put up or whatever those things might be, so you can uncover them and see them and enjoy them on a more regular basis. So sentimental items, of course, those kind of things are probably going to be in these kind of storage areas, particularly if we've got a lot of them. But you've really got to take the time, on a regular basis to go through these things. Would we go through sentimental items as part of a loft declutter or basement or attic or garage or whatever it is? Yes, but towards the end. And so I would sort of siphon these things off into a separate category and do them at the end of that declutter, because they are a completely separate category of stuff, like where the emotions are much more deep-seated. So if you come across sentimental items when you're in the throes of practical decluttering, leave those things to one side and come back to them later. It's so important. Otherwise, you just get bogged down. Once you start going through letters and cards and medals and kids' artwork and all that kind of stuff, you want to give yourself the time to enjoy that. And when you're full blown into a loft declutter is not the time for that, right, Ingrid?
Exactly. You almost need to kind of get a box together and write down sentimental items from my mom or my grandmother or my kid or whatever, and go, right, I'm going to just, when I see something that is sentimental, put it in the box and I'm going to return to that. I'm now in the sorting phase of this loft. I need to organize it. I need to sort it out. I need to declutter. And then later you can revisit some of these categories. Now, talking about things that we find, bags full of clothes, Leslie. And it often is clothes that we have been given by another person because, for example, their children have outgrown it. They, on a random meetup, give us this bin bag full of clothes and go, oh, we thought this might be handy for your kids. You're going to go, yeah, thanks. And then it kind of ends up on a loft. Or if you've got multiple children, you might think to yourself, oh, well, this was very good for child number 1. This could go to child number 2, but there's an age gap normally between kids.
Always, in fact. Well, apart from
twins. Unless they're twins. And then you kind of put them somewhere else thinking, I'm going to look at that later. So it's a hand-me-down category of stuff.
Yeah, so there's like hand-me-downs in there. And there's also our own clothes, which we're kind of handing down to ourselves maybe in a few years, just in case. Do you know what I mean? We've got those kind of things as well. Things in suitcases, things, of course, some people have got clothes on rotation, which is fine as long as you've got a system to back that up. So there's no problem keeping things in a loft or a basement that you're going to rotate in a summer or winter season, if that's what you have where you live. Not a problem, but you need to be doing that. You can't just put it up there and then forget about it, which is what we see in cluttered homes. We see that these bags of stuff are there 3 or 4 years and you forget that you got them and you went and got new stuff and you prefer that and all that. So these things are up for debate. Clothes are up for debate because it's never, these areas are never great. They're kind of damp, wet, cold, dusty,
dark normally,
dark.
sometimes lights.
Yeah,
Access
exactly.
is tricky. So okay, so we now have identified what kind of stuff is in those storage areas, what kind of emotions are involved. So let's take a break. And then after the break, we're going to talk you through, but how are you going to do this? So welcome back to this podcast where we're talking about storage spaces and how to set them up for success. So we've identified the kinds of things we find in these storage areas. We've identified why they end up in these areas. So let's now talk about, okay, if you're going to do this project, how can you do that?
Well, first things first, what we spoke about before the break is about having less. And that's the key to any decluttering and organizing project is first identify exactly what you need to keep. And then once you've gone through some of those decisions, some of those thought processes that we talked about, you can declutter some stuff, hopefully a lot of stuff. As I say, these kind of areas, there's a lot of stuff that can go quite often because it's just been there. It's been out of sight, out of mind. So once you've done that and you're left with the stuff that you want to keep, then you need to start organizing it into a system that's going to make it really, really visible and accessible. So, so important.
Yeah.
And this is where you need to have the right storage in the right places. It needs to be zoned. It needs to be mapped out. Ingrid, let's talk about boxes and crates and how that all works.
Yes. So ideally, you want to have crates with lids or storage containers with lids. And also ideally, they would stack. And I'm not saying that you need to stack 6 gigantic boxes on top of each other, but if even just 1 or 2 can stack on top of each other, then that would be really helpful. And that's where the lids come in as well. Especially since Leslie said, normally the areas where we're working are dusty, are cold, are damp. So you want to have proper storage containers. This is not the area where you want to quibble and get really cheap storage solutions. You want to spend a little bit more money. And I'm not talking about tens and tens of pounds or dollars, but you want to get a good quality box that really can last you for a while. Because if you go cheap, it will break, the lids will not fit properly, it will not close properly, and you're just making stuff worse for yourself. So I think that's the beginning.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about cold and damp and wet. There's also hot as well. You know what I mean? Obviously, depending on where you are in the world or even in the UK, when it's hot, if it's at the top of a house, it's absolutely roasting. And those kind of boxes really take a little bit of a battering. So yeah, really think about the box. It's important to invest wisely in something that's going to be around for 20, 30 years. Really, really important. Also think about what you need to do with those boxes. So are there things that need to be carried in and out? Seasonal decorations, for example. We're going to need to move those. Do we want it to be something that has to be 2 people to actually move those boxes, or do we want to be able to move it ourselves? So don't go too big if you have to kind of maneuver those boxes on your own. Also think about things like, this is more UK based, loft hatches. And so in the UK, we have like ladders that go up to loft spaces. And we have to be able to get those boxes up and down through those loft spaces if we want to. The last thing we want to do is to start taking the stuff out of the boxes to pass it down the loft ladder. And so really think about the size of those boxes. Don't overdo it. Make sure that those boxes are fit for purpose. And in a loft where it is typically awkward, little bit dark, not as easy to see as other places, make sure you use those labels and put those labels everywhere. Put them on the front of the box, the top of the box, the side of the box, the other side of the box, the back of the box, whatever. Put these labels in multiple places, because the boxes get moved around. And just because that label is on the front now, if you move it, it might not be on the front, it might need to be on the side. And so it gives you that flexibility. So labels are everything when it comes to boxes. We love a label, right? I'd go for something a bit bigger in a loft as well. Like often the label maker labels are not quite big enough because you need something quite big and bold. So this is sometimes where other types of even just stickers and Sharpies work quite well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get too perfectionistic about this, because it can really hold you up in your process. I think the main thing is that you can see it, that you can see where everything is, and that you can identify what's in a box. So really label accordingly. Maybe if you have, I don't know, 8 Christmas decoration boxes, maybe you want to go Christmas, and then these are the lights, and this is Christmas, but these are the bubbles, and this is Christmas, and this is the tree, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And so you can kind of go, it gives you a little bit more than just, oh, I 8 books for Christmas and I still don't know anything, and I need to find 1 or 2 bits, or I need to find my advent calendar or whatever, and now I'm not gonna have to rummage through 8 different boxes to find where it is. So think about that a little bit and spend just a little bit more time on that, and that will really help your future self.
Yes, exactly. And so once we've decided on our box and we put the right things in the right boxes, it's all lovely. We need to make sure it's not a jumbled up mess. And so we need to make sure that it makes sense. It's so important for your storage areas to make sense to other people. We don't want to be the only people that are responsible for those, the kind of like, where's the whatever? And you go up in the loft, where in the loft? It needs to be clear to everybody who's using that where these things are. And that's what you're going to do with zoning and mapping. So important. So what do we mean by zoning, Ingrid?
It's basically that you put a different category of items in a different part of the loft. So you put your suitcases together, you put your Christmas decorations together, you put your sports equipment together. But if you are a sporty family, you might go, actually, this is camping, and this is skiing, and this is hiking, and this is whatever it is. So divide it up a little bit. You can have a category, and you can even create some subcategories. I, for example, have several seasonal decorations. So I've got a box for Halloween, and one for Easter, and one for a Dutch holiday that we celebrate, and Christmas. So
You can say the name of it, Ingrid. You're allowed to say the name of the Dutch holiday. It's like this kind of hidden kind of celebration that we're not allowed to know the name of. What is it, Ingrid?
It's Sinterklaas. It's Sinterklaas on the 5th of December. And I've also got like a one dressing up box with like funny hats and things, because sometimes you need that. And when you got like a luau party or something. I mean, I've got a box with random stuff. Like a luau, like an Hawaiian party.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So have do you have those parties often?
Yeah, I do.
What you just get your, are they called lays? They're called lays or something, right? So you just get those out and dance around the living room like you and Jan and the kids.
Not at home, but I need a party, and I thought that's handy, Yeah, I mean,
is it labeled?
Yes.
Luau. What did you say it was called?
No, it's just like dressing up. Like I call it dressing up.
Dressing up. It's not got its own category. Like you've not got that much party gear that it's got.
Like one box with like I don't know, a pirate, pirate costume or something. Like random things. And I've got like I've got a section with memory boxes as well, because I've got my loft is, thank goodness, is quite good, and there's no damp and everything's good light. It's a bit cold and a bit hot, but I've got some memory boxes there as well. So I've really thought about it. I've not just randomly gone, right, okay, my boxes are full. Let's just chuck them all back up there and we'll see what happens. I've kind of gone, okay, I want to kind of group items like with like. And of course, the things that I use more often are closest to my loft hatch, or if it's in a basement, it would be close to the door. You don't want to go, actually, this is the stuff that I do use 2 or 3 or 4 times per year, and I have to crawl all the way through to the end of my storage area and try and find it and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mine's a bit awkward, right? So I've not got any of those kind of areas. So I've got a cupboard because I basically used all of those spaces. So I have a loft space. I made that into a laundry room, but I do have a cupboard that I use for suitcases. So I've got a cupboard that's kind of just off my laundry room for suitcases. I've got a room downstairs that I keep. It's more of a kind of utility space where I've got like batteries and bulbs and wrapping paper and all that stuff. But then downstairs in the kind of bulk storage, which would be a garage, I am a little bit tight on space because my husband loves decorating, fireworks, and what else has he got down there? Like barbecue, like outdoor, like living type things. So he keeps buying stuff, and I'm like, we've literally not got space to keep it. We've got this kind of ideal space for Christmas decorations, but Halloween and Christmas are like huge here, and so I've really got to. We have to think about it carefully and rotate as we're putting the Christmas decks away and make sure that they go to the back if Halloween's coming first. And well, it obviously is first and next and stuff. So we have to think about it. So ours is not. It's not ideal, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You work with the space that you have, and you just have to be smart about it. If you have hardly any storage spaces, then you can't keep you can't have all this stuff because it's got nowhere to go. And a suitcase might have to live on top of your wardrobe because there's just no other way. You have to work with what you have. And I mean, I would have loved to have made my loft into a room, but we couldn't because our loft actually wasn't high enough to be able to create it into a room, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Our roof wasn't high enough. So, but we then said, okay, well, let's make the best loft space that we get, board it out, put good light in, put a floor in, good boxes, good labels, and make the most out of our space that way.
Yeah. So zoning is really, really important if you can. I mean, sometimes you've got limited space so everything kind of needs to go together, but make it logical, put the, decorations, different types of decorations next to each other and things like that. So, and then I think, just following on from this idea that it shouldn't just be you. If it's just you in the house, then it is you that manages it. But if there's other people in your household, you want them to be able to get involved and put things away. And so make sure that you create if you've got like a decent sized space, do a little map, do a little diagram of where things are so that people can look at it. And then you can say, look at the diagram. Do you know what I mean? Because other people, particularly kids, will find any excuse not to put things away. You rope them into these things, so it's easier for kids to go up and down loft ladders than it is probably for you. And, it'd just be nice for them to actually be able to do something. We need to give them a fighting chance to be able to help us, right?
Yeah. I know. Yes,
and a map is definitely something that can do that. So good boxes, zoning into the right categories, and your categories will be very, very different to everybody else's. So it needs to be something that's bespoke to you. And then do a little diagram or a map and put it somewhere prominent near the door of the basement or the garage or whatever. So you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I would love to know what kind of storage areas people have around the world. So please let us know. Send us a comment maybe on our YouTube channel, or leave a comment if you're listening on our declutterhub.com website. You can leave a comment as well. We would love to know, what kind of storage area have you got? And if you're feeling brave, maybe you even want to share your pictures in our Facebook group. I mean, that would be awesome as well to see some of pictures there of people's storage areas. Have you got it neatly labeled and organized? Or you think to yourself, this podcast has made me think, I think I need to put this on my list of things to do.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.